Hey everybody, it's your buddy Pete, a Turner, executive producer and host of the Break It Down show. I am waiting on E.C. Haynes to show up, Eldridge Haynes, who wrote a book. Pull the book up right here. Look at this thing. The Bus to Beulah. I think it's Beulah. I don't know. We'll see when EC gets on. EC's apparently en route, so I'm tracking it on my phone. He should be here in a moment. But I thought I would still check in with all of you because when you do live shows, sometimes there's scheduling conflicts. All right. So the first thing is you can always get a Break It Down show shirt, and let me put that link up because that's a super great way to help me when you want to support the show. You can just go to breakitdownshow.com. You can go into the Break It Down show store right there in the upper left-hand corner once you get in there. Let's see. Okay, all right. They're working on trying to get EC in here. So apart from shirts and everything else, I got a couple of things I'm hoping that's going to come through. I'm hoping to go on the road again this summer and grab a bunch of shows. So if you're out there and you're not in California, like, hey, Pete, can you come by and see me here? Boy, let me know. I'll do my best to do it. I am driving. So the Ride for the Brave, something I can talk about right now. The Ride for the Brave is Save the Braves annual charity ride. Scott Hughes gets on his motorcycle, rides across the nation. It just so happens that in the last year, my brother passed away, a veteran, took his own life. And so it's even more poignant when you're working on this problem and trying to fight it, and then someone in your immediate family, has to conclude their own life. It's just illustrates how tough this problem is. So we're going to ride. And so we'll ride from, let's see here. We will ride from, let me pull up my references so I get this right. All right. We'll ride from Temecula to Tucson on the 22nd of July. So if you're in July and you're thinking about where you're going to meet us, Tucson on the 22nd, El Paso on the 23rd. We'll be in Odessa, Texas on the 24th. We'll be in Dallas, Texas on the 25th. That's a big point right there. We have a lot of great support from Marty B's and the local folks in that area. They do a great job. So when I say Dallas, it's really the north, closer to Plano than it is to Dallas, but it's a great event. We'll have a lot of people there. So that's the 25th. The 26th will be in Houston at St. Arnold Brewery, and already everybody's getting super excited about that. Looks like Houston's going to be a big stop for us. And then we go to New Orleans, which hopefully we'll be able to dial in and make really cool and special. And after that, we go to basically Birmingham, Alabama. So New Orleans, Birmingham. So New Orleans on the 27th, Birmingham on the 28th, Atlanta on the 29th, and then basically the USS Yorktown, which is in, I think, the Charleston harbor. So you go to South Carolina. So if you're any stop along the way, or you want to ride in between on a motorcycle or whatever it is, let me know. We're taking donations for people that want to ride with us. So it's $100 a leg, I think is what the number is. But ultimately, if you just came out and supported by riding, that'd be awesome too. The big thing with Save the Brave is that we work hard. So it's not easy to ride across the country in the middle of summer through the South because it's so damn hot. I mean, between like, say, Tucson, which is no picnic, all the way to Dallas, it is insanely hot. And so this is a long, hard ride, but we do it. This is kind of like what I call veteran Ramadan, where we go out and we throw some suffering on ourselves and show up on people's doorsteps and say, hey, we could use your help to make less veterans want to kill themselves and to support their families once that inevitability happens. So that's what we're trying to do. It would mean a lot to me if you guys supported that. Obviously, everybody has their own charity, and I'm not asking for you to do anything crazy. As long as you're doing something with charity, that's the bigger ask, is just do something. If you're an adult and you have any kind of stability in your life, you should be reaching back and helping somebody else over the wall, whether you're working on an animal-based charity, environmental, whatever it's going to be. Just do your part to lift up the community. All right, let me check my phone here and see what the status is. He's having tech issues. Yes. Well, tech issues are a thing. Okay, so we'll give him another minute or two here to pop in. One of the other things about the Ride for the Brave that I think is pretty cool is I'm going to be critical right here. Okay, as we leave the state of California, the level of support goes way up. So I am calling you out, California. I know there's a lot of people that support what we do, that love veterans, that kind of thing. But it's amazing how once you get out of California, the people come running out there, and they come running and help and everything else. So it's it's a neat thing, and I hope you all come out and support it. Will there be a welcome home party? I'll probably be in SoCal in early August. Yes, why not? Brian, definitely. We'll try to throw something together. If not, we'll just get together and do it. Brian's awesome. Brian's a Giants fan. I'm a Dodgers fan, but I also love the Giants. It's a funny thing. When I wear my Dodger hat at home, I get a lot of grief about it, but I like everything that's from California. So I actually was thinking this morning, I need to get another hat to rotate in. My black number 6 hat. It's no good anymore. That thing is old and worn out. And so I think I'm going to get myself a Giants hat. So that's kind of a fun thing. I swear EC is coming. He's working on his tech issues. And so I'm just trying to see here. And I guess if he doesn't make it, he doesn't make it. But another cool thing that's coming up, we're going to be going to NAMM again this year. We've partnered with them once again. I think we're the oldest podcast-based show that they've had supporting them for the longest. How great is that? And so we're going to have a bunch of live things going on and some brands and a couple of smaller things. We did this really cool thing with the Roland 808 and a bunch of people that use the 808, including Egyptian Lover a couple of years ago. And that was really neat. So we're looking forward to doing something like that, maybe with Dunlop, which is a Benicia brand, but also a worldwide brand. There's a number of things that we're trying to do with that. So look forward to that. A couple of producers that we're going to have on the show, and probably 1 or 2 of the inductees. I can't tell you who the inductees are, even though I know, but they're icons. And so they're going to go into the Tech Awards Hall of Fame, and it's going to be a fun event. John and I, but also Sage Logan, who you've met through the show. You guys should definitely check out her work and spin Sage Logan on your music provider. Contemplating getting her reviewed. She's got about 5 songs that are all like in this, like I would call it a suite about relationships that she's going to put out over the course of the next few months. So anyhow, that's those are the big updates. Let me see how EC is doing here. I want to see my inbox. Let me just send a message back real fast here. I'm going to have to put in a policy where guests have to chime in earlier, because I just can't do this, pop in at 10 o'clock exactly or have tech issues thing anymore. It's a live show, so we got to have everything lined up ahead of time. That's just the new policy. You heard about it here first in the Break It Down show. Do you have any questions? I know there's a couple of you out there watching. Glad to take those. I'm also glad to promote my own stuff. But before I ring my bell, I thought I might ask you all, what are you guys worried about, questioning about, want to know? Is there anything, any topics you'd like me to go explore? I've got some really cool PhD folks that hopefully will be able to come on the show soon that are talking about some amazing stuff. That's just a matter of getting through that. Let's see. He's trying to install. Yeah. Tech issues. What can you do? All right, we'll give him a couple more minutes. Technology's easy until it's not. It just drives me crazy sometimes. Okay, we had a couple of big things. So there's a guy I'm trying to get who studied the effects on the flight of baseball in terms of physics. We know about Magnus effect and everything else, but there's also a seam-driven effect that pushes the ball in different ways. And so he's been studying that. You think about sports and all of these advances in terms of technology and training. So you can do pressure plate training as a pitcher to determine, how evenly you're applying pressure and where the right form is, and what does that equate to? When I see guys throwing reliably above 100 miles an hour over and over again, that used to be a rare thing. But 97, 98, you're adorable. Like, you throw fast, but not that fast. And so we're getting this hyper focus on what the ball does, what your body does, how to make your body perform better. And hopefully he'll come on. He's he works out of UC Irvine, but hopefully he'll come on in the next couple of weeks here. It's really tough. A lot of these guys are super busy publishing things and everything else. I got a question here. Tech issues. are a daily occurrence for me. Yes, Barbara, you're feeling my pain. It is it drives me a little bit crazy. It's look, I can't get too mad because I'll make a mistake too, or I'll have some tech problem. So I know these things happen. So I'm not too upset. But um, you know, we're all waiting around. So we're going to talk and visit for a few minutes. I'm going to be in Benicia next week for those of you who are Benicia folks. And if you're not, Benicia is the hometown where I grew up. I love it there. I go up all the time. It's in the Bay Area. It's not quite East Bay. It's not quite North Bay. It's sort of its own weird little thing. But every year I go back to my high school and I talk to students. These days it's AP seniors who I took a class from a guy that I grew up with and graduated with from Benicia, and he's back there teaching now. And so I've been doing this. Gosh, it's going to be 20 years here pretty soon. But I go back and I just talk to them like, hey, I'm you from the future. Like, what do you want to ask yourself? Like, what life is like? And I let them rap with me about a variety of topics. My buddy Kent, he kind of guides the conversation, but they want to ask about college or working or life in general, or just questions about things that are going on. I'm always game to talk to them. And what I don't do is I don't lie to them, and I don't treat them like kids, because these are not only seniors, these are AP student seniors. So these guys are really like they've already begun their college path. And so I treat them, maybe like the first adult in their life through an institution who's like, hey, you guys are going to be on your own here in about like 2 weeks. So let's start acting like it. You guys are, you're proto adults, and sure, you can't survive on your own quite yet, but if you had to, could, you know, luckily we don't have to have that much instability where 17 and 18-year-olds are having to support themselves and everything else, but it's certainly possible. So I try to treat them with that respect, that they are adults. I'm going to give this, nope. No, there's no alternative. Well, it looks like it's not going to work. So I'm going to shut this down. We'll get EC scheduled for another time, and we'll circle back and get him in, and I don't know, at another time. Oh wait, hold on. This just in. EC Haynes. Hey man, how are you? You did
I'm all
it.
right. And all of a sudden it says that my computer was on a Safari, and I was trying to get off of the Safari and get into Chrome or Firefox or any of the other browsers. Anyway, so I'm sorry.
It works all the time. Woo. Okay, do this for me. You can introduce yourself, either Eldridge or EC, whatever you want to say. This is Eldridge Haynes, and you're watching the Break It Down show. Say that for me, and we'll get started.
Good afternoon. This is Eldridge Haynes, and I'm delighted to be here
On the Break It Down show. There it is. The bus.
There it is.
Is it Beulah, or how do you say Beulah?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, there you go. I got it right. And this book is about it's a thriller, right? And it sort of dives into and the guy I was hoping that would come on today is a guy named Todd Bentzman, and he's a reporter and works in Texas professionally as a guy who writes and investigates border policy and what that means internally and externally.
Right.
I've given myself a bit of a cough from talking too much. So Todd wasn't able to come, but one of the things he's revealed for us is that there are these problems. Like, we want to have this country that's immigrant friendly and permissive, but that turns into a lot of human atrocity and exploitation. And I think you've tried to capture this in your book. There's a lot of things in this thing I was reading through. I love the timeline basis, but I guess just give us a synopsis of the bust of Beulah, and then we'll go from there.
Well, the book is based on an article that I read in BuzzFeed some years ago now, I guess, or 2 years ago, maybe, about immigration and about the laws involved with it, and a company that was getting visas because under the 1986 law, which says you can't hire undocumented workers, they said, except you can get visas, seasonal work permits for workers coming in. And what was particularly telling is that in the case of North Carolina, which is fifth or sixth in the country behind California, Texas, Florida, and then you go into sort of Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina kind of. In North Carolina, just North Carolina, there between 180 probably estimates, because that's all there are, and 220,000 people every year that come in to help plant, maintain, harvest, uh, wash, separate, pick, pack, etc. All the produce. I mean, with the exception of corn and soybeans, about everything that North Carolina grows, from Christmas trees to tobacco to sweet potatoes, is all hand harvested or pruned or managed, etc. So it's an entire economy, an entire social strata and culture that underlies the rest of the state that people basically don't either understand or acknowledge. They don't have any idea of the size of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that come in and they are not exactly they're not always able to navigate our government and the dangers of our country, but also they come in and they're not flying in on jets and everything else. They're walking, they're being driven across, smuggled across on buses, whatever it's going to be, and that exposes them to people that are targeting people that are traveling in this way because they're vulnerable. So how does that play into, like, how did you pick your method for creating this dynamic with the thriller? And I want to talk about that timeline too.
Well, when I understood, when I'd done a lot of research with the agencies responsible for immigration laws, all of this kind of stuff, and then understood um, the human trafficking. And by the way, human trafficking refers to anything that takes advantage of a worker, be it housing, wages, whatever, that makes them subservient, if you would. It's not just sex trafficking, though that is a
Right.
large part of it as well. But it's taking advantage of people for cheap labor, that you wouldn't normally pay. It occurred to me that there would be an interesting story, and the reason that I like fiction uh, as a method is that it's sort of the spoonful of sugar. I can hopefully tell you a story about people that are interesting in an exciting way. And at the end of it, you will have also learned about a culture that you didn't know existed. So in this case, I picked a young woman coming to America to work uh, on a 1B, which is a multi year visa, to live with her uncle, who has a green card, already is here, works here. And at a bus stop, when she's brought in on a bus that's owned by the guy who got the visa, she uncovers or overhears a fight between the only other two women on the bus, where one, the younger of the two, finds out she's being brought in as a prostitute, not a cook in the camps,
Right.
and takes some objection to that. And the trafficker who is there to pick up the other two women to take them to a different place than not into Beulah. Um, they take Maria Puente with them because she overheard, and they're afraid that she would expose the human trafficking operation. And so she's gone. Then, when her uncle finds out after calling to see where she is, they lie and say she never got on the bus in Monterrey, in Mexico.
Mm.
Well, which they know is a lie. So her uncle goes to the sheriff in the county where he is and says, I don't know what's happened to her. They said she didn't get on the bus. I know she did. So something has happened. And the sheriff basically comes to the conclusion, after talking to the state agencies, that she's been kidnapped, that she found something out, which he doesn't know, but that they've only got a certain amount of time in order to find her before she just disappears forever. So
Yeah.
I wrote it from, as you say, the thriller standpoint. They've got a limited amount of time to find Maria, and so everything that they do is based on getting it done quickly. So it's organized day one, day two, day three, and then the hours within those days.
Yeah, that timeline creates a sense of urgency. It's a great method for doing what you're trying to do, getting that creating that tension. How did you come up with that?
I don't know. I had a good friend of mine who was a screenwriter and uh, producer in Hollywood, New York. We were discussing it. He was giving me some great advice,
Mm.
and we came up with it. And I said, "What if we, instead of chapters, do it this way?" And he said, "I've never seen a book that's organized that way. Why not? It heightens the
Yeah.
tension. You know, the fact is, they know they have a short time. The people at the SBI, State Bureau of Investigation, said if you don't find her quick, she's gone, because if she has gotten involved in something, then and they've taken her, then they did so for a reason, and their reason is they're scared that she found something out. So you better find her fast." So
I had a lady on the show recently named Benedicte Grima. She wrote a book about an immigrant being in America. And I don't think he arrived legally, but this is a fictional book, but based on reality, because she knows a lot about Pashtuns and the Swat Valley. And basically, she tells this story about this guy who, for whatever reason, comes up on the terrorist databases. Whether he was or not doesn't really even matter, because there's no way out of this trap, right? And so, because of where he's from and being a male, he gets kind of swept up into this thing. And so he manages to get into the U.S. and works this very austere existence in New York City, working in a 7-Eleven and making cash under the table. And these are real things. Like, these things actually happen. What you're talking about, even though you guys are both writing about fiction, because we're not great at, and your character uses a legal system, her character doesn't, but because we're not great at processing people in, they are open to exploitation, putting people on a bus and like, hey, you're across the border, like, and then the atrocity begins, because they're so exploitable, because they've got nothing, they don't know the language, they don't know the rules. And so you can find yourself 24 hours later in a completely different world, and getting mixed up with something can be as simple as you say, sitting on a bus and overhearing a conversation.
yeah, well, I mean, Maria was coming in with a perfectly legitimate work visa. She finds out about human trafficking, in this case, sex trafficking, and our whole life changes. And the fact is that the drugs and the cartels in Mexico, who control human trafficking, um, are a very real part of the whole thing. And a lot of people are looking at people trying just to get to security of America, on the border, and they're saying, "Oh, these hordes of people coming in." Well, the fact of the matter is, there's something like 2.5 million who come in every year. Not just come in, but are essential. I mean, California and Texas and Florida and North Carolina, agriculturally, would be in very serious shape without these people.
No. Yeah, Arizona too.
Anytime
Arizona.
you have that many people.
Yeah. Yeah. And you need that support for jobs that, we just don't want to do. We can offshore those jobs. You have to offshore them internally, though, right?
That's
And
right. Exactly.
most of the food in America is made in California and Arizona. And that seems impossible, but it's true.
It doesn't if you go up the valley in California. My son lives in Northern California, and when you go through and see the orchards and the
Yeah.
fields, and I mean, it's staggering, the simple amount of food.
Yeah, I was driving up because I live in Orange County, and again, for those watching, they know, but I'm from a place called Benicia, which is in the Bay Area. And when you see the miles and miles and miles and miles, not talking acres, we're talking miles,
Right.
of pomegranate trees, you realize, like, when we go to Afghanistan to try to help people grow pomegranates that they're already growing, you kind of laugh, because your 150 trees.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's an instant on I-5.
How many? Yeah. How many pistachio trees?
Oh my
Oh, exactly. I mean, walnuts. I mean, it goes on forever. And
Yeah.
the same thing in North Carolina and South Carolina, the peaches and stuff, as in California, and apples that grow here. the cucumbers for pickles and stuff. I mean, it's endless the number of people that we need to harvest and package all these products.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a difference between, like, so when I was in Iraq, you know, running around out there doing the work I was doing, the thing I would talk to farmers, we have this belief that that is a viable economic system in other places. But when I'm talking to that Iraqi farmer and I'm like, how big does your crop have to be before you have to hire some, you know, migrant Iranian farm worker? And they laugh in my face. They're like, there's no crop so big that my family and I can't bring it in. We would never hire anybody from the South, from another country, because we'll do it ourselves. We don't, you know, so our thinking, right, is so out of scope with reality. And then when we try to solve these problems in the world, we can't even solve our own damn problems. You know, it's
Well,
funny.
if you take a look, I was with a farmer in eastern North Carolina who raises sweet potatoes. He raises, and on land, he doesn't own it all. He leases a lot from smaller farmers. He harvested 1.45 million bushels last year.
Wow.
Well, I mean, a guy that's a small farmer technically could do that, but economically, he can't make enough money. He can't compete against somebody who's bringing that in, who also has the equipment that washes and sorts, packages, cold storage, et cetera, et cetera. So the number of small farms in North Carolina, for example, have just evaporated in many cases because there's no longer tobacco allotments. So if you want to raise tobacco, you're having a contract with a tobacco company for your entire crop, and it better be a couple of thousand acres if you're going to make any money.
Yeah. Yeah, we often talk about big, you know, ag or whatever it is, but the reality is it's hard to stay alive as a small farm. It's really hard. And again, like if you have to hire outside help, it's got to be temporary. You can't keep someone on staff when it's not harvest time.
Well, and the harvest time, if you're in a grain, you can't even afford the equipment on a small farm. So there are companies who will have, you know, harvesters, you know, combines, and they'll start at the southern border and they'll go all the way to Canada harvesting stuff for the smaller farmers. The guy may have, you know, he may plant 1,000, 2,000 acres, but he can't afford, he can't afford, you know, $250,000 worth of equipment.
Right.
He has to rent it.
How did you get into writing? What was your impetus to do this? Because obviously you've done other things in your life. What got you to the point where you're like, hey, I need to write these books?
You know, that's a good question. I just, as you say, I read a lot. I had done some essays and articles and things and other things that I have been doing. And I just decided that there was, in the first one, there was a story I wanted to tell because I felt very strongly about it based on my own experiences. And so I went to, you know, writing classes, you know, North Carolina Writers Conference, and got great advice from some really good people, some instructors, and submitted work to them. And, you know, it just sort of grew from there. And that I just love doing it. So I went from one to the next to now the third novel.
Yeah. And the book we're talking about for everybody is called The Bus to Beulah. It's about a migrant farmer who's coming in to work a crop and with some family and gets kind of hijacked and caught up into a human trafficking thriller situation. The book is told in over like a 24 or however many hour time frame. And it's like, you know, at this hour, because if you don't find this person in that amount of time, they're not going to get him. So it's a novel, and it's by this guy right here who's sitting next to me. It's EC. I've gotten good at the backwards pointing.
Yeah,
Eldridge Haynes. And you can find his books on Amazon. There is the link down below. It's right over there. There's the link. And you can definitely go to that. Or you can just, I think you have a website too, right? That people can go to.
Website is EC Haynes. And there's also on Amazon, you can put in The Bus to Beulah and it'll bring it up as well. Or you can put EC Haynes in there.
Yeah, and I've put the link into the comments, so you can look in the comments and grab the link there. By the way, that helps me. If you buy something through Amazon, especially EC's book, I get a penny or two, and over the course of time, that turns into a couple $100, and that's super helpful. If you want to have a more immediate impact on my company and what I do as a producer, you can go to breakitdownshow.com, and there is a link for the store where you can get yourself a Break It Down Show shirt. Or any number of other shirts that we've designed. Or the best way, go to PayPal and just invent your own subscription. You want to do $5, $20, $25 a month, whatever it's going to be. That's how I funded the show. And that pile of money is growing as more and more people there. And I'm super grateful for that, because that takes a lot of the financial burden off my back. We're not quite over the hump yet where it's all paid for, because I can always add more expense like marketing and everything else. But that little bit, if you like what I do, you like the fact that I'm working hard trying to create stuff, this is how you support the show. And I always say, like, would you buy me a beer? Would you buy me a sandwich if I showed up? All right, well, then just buy me a beer every month. Buy me a sandwich every month. Buy me whatever it is. And that'll help me to keep the lights on, to keep this thing going, so I can bring you people like E.C. Haynes, who wrote The Bus to Beulah. All right, so enough talking about that. Hey, what did you do before you were an author?
I was chairman of a company called the Russ Group, Russberry Gifts, which was a sort of a culmination of a number of acquisitions and businesses that we bought. We were an international consumer products company. My wife used to call it trinkets and trash. We'd made ceramic figures. I had about 40 businesses in China that manufactured products, and we sold promotional products, sports related things, a lot of stuff, and all over the world.
I like it. A lot of stuff and trash.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had snow globes and ceramic figures and polymer figures for Disney, and I did mugs and steins for all of the NFL and NBA and Major League Baseball, and products for consumer. I mean, for companies like Harley Davidson and John Deere and Coca-Cola and all people like that. And we made millions of pieces of plush teddy bears and rabbits and trinkets and trash with a lot of gift items.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And it's I think it illustrates the point where you do that for a career, whenever have whatever level of success you had. It seems like you've done pretty well. But then you said, like, hey, I'm gonna get started again on something new, and it's gonna be writing. Was there how many fears, or what kind of fears did you have to go over to actually start that? And then have you gotten over the hump? Do you feel like, yeah, this is worth my time to do it? Or is this more like, oh, let's see what happens phase?
No, there are very few writers that I know, and I know quite a few, who really make a living doing this. I mean, that there are some,
Right.
but I think the average book sale I read one time for the author, across all that are published, is about 1,000 copies, per title. So you're not going to do well on 1,000 copies, rest assured. I do it because I love doing it. I like the process. If you don't like the process, then you really shouldn't get into it. But I've been invited, for example, to do essays for regional publications, the Southern Quarterly.
You got like the bus station.
For a number of other. I did essays for a book of University of North Carolina Press. So you do articles, essays, and stuff is nice, but then most of the time I'm doing either work on a novel, which I am now, or short stories or something like that.
What kind of a writer are you? Are you like an iron butt guy where you sit down for 16 hours and then, go to bed and wake up and do it again? Are you 3 or 4 hours and then move something else? How do you do it?
Well, I've got an iron butt, but I can only 16 hours I couldn't take. I when I was working and I was still doing work in my company, I really only had time early in the morning. So I would get up and write for a couple of hours in the morning, and then maybe on the weekend, stuff like that. Since I've retired, then I have a more disciplined approach, and I'll write for 3 or 4 hours a day. Anything longer than that, I find, one, I start to wander, and two, I start rushing myself, and so I'm just writing garbage. So,
Yeah.
uh, I have a certain limit, but I have to do it every day.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. It
It's
makes sense.
like, it's like if you're a musician, the greatest musicians I've known, and I've known a bunch, practice every day.
Yeah.
They're it takes a constant work, revision. You'll find, you just have to stay at it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And one of the things I know from talking to a lot of musicians, practice is where the best stuff happens, but the shows are very controlled, much like writing. Like you might write something incredible, doesn't mean it's going to make the book, right? Because the book has you have to edit it to be exactly what the whole book needs, not that one moment, right? So there's you get that by practicing, and maybe you're able to pull that move off later on in another book, or that little thought actually comes to fruition is through
Yeah.
that daily repetition. This is what separates, like the idea, great, that's who cares, everybody has an idea, but can you go out and act upon that idea? And then can you have a new idea, and can you repeat upon the action? It's this accumulation of work. That's where these 10,000 hours come from, right?
Well, then the real work is in the rewrites. It's the editing. It's this, you, as a friend of mine once said, you have to kill a lot of your children. So
Yeah.
it's something that's really great. You go, God, that's wonderful. Now, this is a great new character and everything. And all of a sudden you realize, but it doesn't fit. It slows the story down. It doesn't work here. I really love this. It was a really great passage, but it just, so you kill it, you take it out. You don't want to end up with a dead end, character where somebody will get the end of the book and they'll say, well, what the hell ever happened to Joe? I really like Joe. And he was, and all of a sudden Joe just disappeared.
Yeah.
It's gotta all fit.
Yeah. I'm putting a link up here for everybody. I did a really neat show with a lady named Megan Konar, and she is a PhD who studies the movement of food around the nation. Really fascinating stuff. And you learn a lot about how, like, the systems that we have that we want to change are there for a reason, because they've already been refined and refined and refined. And so when you put food on a truck, it just only costs this much. If you try to redo that, it costs, you can't even see because my hands are off the screen. It costs so much more. Really fascinating. And then the vulnerabilities of, like, these locks aren't serviced at a pace that they need to be serviced when you bring this barge up the Mississippi or wherever it's going to be. And so you imperil. And right now we're going through a problem with our supply chain, right? And because we have a system that's highly efficient and developed, and when there's a problem within it, boy, it's really tough to get these things going again. So I think that's a really timely link to go check out. That's in the also in the comments. So I don't want to distract from your book, but I thought it was relevant and bring us back to the book in terms of what it takes to feed a nation, and we're an exporter as well, so we feed other people too. But when you have these people coming across the border, there are so many variables that cause problems. One of the things that Todd Bensman brought up in his episode that we did was that not everybody cares about the well-being of the U.S. in their immigration policy, right? And so if they can funnel you through Guatemala to the U.S. legitimately, they're like, we don't care how bad of a person you are. It's not our problem. You want to go to Guatemala via to the US? Great. Let's do it. So there are people that have an entire industry. We had this is really neat, DC. We had this guy who was a drug trafficker on the show, right? I'll put a link up for that show. And he's talking about the economy of the drug traffic business. And he's like, we really don't care who the president is. We just adjust our business model to adjust how we bring stuff in. And there's going to be some losses. We're going to lose some people to prison and to death and to retirement and everything. But that doesn't stop the fact that this is a multi-billion-dollar business. And we think something as simple as, like, throw up a fence or whatever it's going to be is going to curtail this. I'm sorry to say that is not the case.
Well, you'd have to be an idiot to think putting up a wall. As I said, I've been to the Great Wall of China, and that's a lot bigger wall than we're talking about putting up.
Yeah.
A lot more substantial, and they still have to man it with people every so often, every quarter mile or mile or whatever, because it's not hard to blow a hole in a wall and rush a bunch of people through. That's ridiculous. The fact is that we need the people who are coming in, a lot of them. We could probably have and should have a lot better system to manage it. But like with the drugs, I come up with a way that these people in the bus, they come up with a way to import drugs that one of the people in the drug business said, "Oh, don't put that in there." And I said, "Well, I can build an atomic bomb based on the internet, so I don't
Yeah.
think I don't think this is going to be a big deal."
Yeah.
But the fact is that, as you say, if you want to get the drugs in and there's enough money in it, I mean, look, private equity groups put together a portfolio of companies. They go to somebody in a college who's got a huge fund and doesn't know diddly about investing, so he hands them a wad of money. They go out and buy a whole bunch of companies. Well, they only have to have in their portfolio maybe two or three that really have a big time, and the rest of them, they go belly up and they don't give a damn. They need to make their numbers at the end of the day, and whether it's with one company or four, they don't care. Same
Right.
thing. The drug guys have already calculated in how many drug operations they're going to lose. In fact, I was told by a guy in a state agency here that there were two or three cases when they've intercepted drugs that, in fact, the drug people intended for them to.
Right.
It was low quality stuff. You got a victory. You did this, and so you'll pull back from the really major stuff. And
Yeah.
these are smart people.
It's sophisticated business, right? And they've been doing it for a long, long time. And there's actually some one of the things, and I've got the link for this show here with a guy named, we're calling him Juan Valdez. And one of the things he said is that look, China's providing a low cost drug thing with fentanyl, and they're looking to undermine the U.S. Mexico also is like, hey, if these stupid Americans want to take this stuff and they're godless like this, let them have it, right? And so there's even like this religious punitive aspect of it, where the company has figured out, the business, the trade of trafficking drugs has figured out that they can exploit all these different affect-based things. So like indifference and everything else. And then the other thing that you have to think about with this is, because there is so much money, you can go to the mayor of Monterrey or the governor of that state in Mexico and say, hey, would you like to have, $5 million a year and allow us to do this? Or would you like to have a 9-cent bullet in your head? Right.
Right.
It's super
Or would
easy.
you like to be divvied up into a 50-gallon drum of
Right.
petrol?
Yeah. Or fed to this guy's dogs or any old thing, right? Like, would you like to be the former mayor and or would you like to be the current mayor and make a lot of money?
Well, that's an interesting part in my book, because the sheriff comes from one of the wealthiest families in Eastern and maybe even all of North Carolina. So when the cartel guy says, what we do when we have a problem is we just make them an offer they can't refuse. You want to have this much, and his associate says, yeah, but the problem is, you're not going to scare this guy. He had a Silver Star and 2 Purple Hearts in Vietnam. And the cartel guy looks at him and said, well, does his wife have a Silver Star? So he said, no. He can't be bought off. But
yeah,
as you say, you put the 9-cent bullet out there, and then they're not above that. I mean, these are some very bad hombres, as they say.
Yeah. Well, and the next person's likely to do it. So why don't you be that person and still be allowed to live this pretty sweet life, right? Because you're going to stay in power. if you've got this agreement. It'll be power given to you by somebody else, but
Yeah.
you will be alive.
Yeah.
The book has all kinds of names, Jared, Dante, all kinds of different characters in there. When you are naming people, are you thinking, oh, you know what, this is like my son, I'm going to name him after him? Are you doing any of that stuff?
I yeah, there are a couple of minor sort of folks that I do that. Um, I knew a man when I was young that lived down in Georgia who had one of the greatest names I've ever heard. His name was Wembley Waters,
Wow.
and I thought, well, what a beautiful name. But I didn't want to use that exactly for the character in Albert. So I have a cousin who has the name Ruffin in there, and it also has a nickname to call him Rough Waters from Ruffin, Albert Ruffin Waters. I mean,
Yeah.
I put some stuff like that together, but generally not too much. I mean,
Not too
in,
much.
in my first book, I had a character. The main character was a guy named Wiley Grace Hoots, which when I was being interviewed on, on a PBS show, guy said, well, why didn't you just say Jesse Helms? Because that's exactly who the hell it was. And I said, well, because it was Wiley Grace Hoots. And I said, I like that. It's very euphonious and I like
Yeah.
the way it sounds. But I'm always thinking of somebody when I'm
Yeah.
trying to name like that.
By the way, hat tip for using the word euphonious. I like it. That's pretty sweet. That you don't hear that word often, and it's a word that I think properly describes something like a great name or a great lyric or whatever it is. So that's fantastic. Thanks for giving us that word for the day.
Well, I'm a
Euphonious.
writer. I better come up with something like that.
Yeah, yeah. There's all kinds of great words like that. That when they pop in, it's like, oh man, what a great word. I'm glad they did that. I also love when I find a word that I don't know. And this is the great thing about reading books like on Kindle, whatever. You just tap the word, and it's like, here's what it means. Like, oh, that's so great, isn't it? And that's kind of how I build my vocabulary through reading and everything. I get to read a lot of books with this job, and it's neat to be able to. I was digging through yours, and again, I was hoping that we could have Todd on here because he brings so much to a book like this because he's so knowledgeable in immigration. How did you find your experts, your resources to go out? And you said you talked to some agency guys and everything, and that could be anything. But how did you find those guys?
Well, as far as the situation in North Carolina, I found out in the BuzzFeed article about an organization called Student Action with Farm Workers, SAF, located at my alma mater at Duke University in North Carolina. And the director of that organization, a woman that I have in the acknowledgments named Melinda Wiggins, nice lady, I've had a number of talks. She wrote a book called The Human Cost of Food that was published by the University of Texas. And it's a whole series of essays and articles about various aspects of the people who come here who are working. You know, if you're in California, and when my son lives 16 miles south of Napa, well, if you're up in Napa in that region north up there in the valley, when it's time to harvest grapes, you're going to see one hell of a lot of people around working in all of those vineyards. So it's a you know, it's comprehensive, and yet sometimes people don't make the connection, which
Yeah.
is
What town is your, if you don't mind, what town or what county does your son live in? If you don't want to reveal the town, but
he lives in a town called Fairfield,
no, that is,
where Travis Air Force Base is.
I know exactly where Fairfield is. As a matter of fact, I know exactly where Travis is because the C5s would fly over my house. But it goes west to east, Benicia, Cordelia, Fairfield. They're all like the same little metro area. So yeah, when you said 16 miles south of Napa, I'm like, I know exactly where, whatever that is. I know
Well, and
exactly.
you talk about great farms. I mean, you know, Solano County. I mean, then my gosh, there's some incredible farms and you know vineyards and everything else up there. Well,
Yeah,
North Carolina is the same. I mean, we have a pickle company called Mount Olive Pickles. They
yeah,
have a million square feet of
yeah,
warehouse and production space, and they have tanks that can store 40 million pounds
yeah.
of cucumbers and pickles. I mean,
go a little further north than that. I think it's Mazida is the other like pickled things company.
Yeah.
You know, and yes, there's a lot of that. By the way, Brian chimes in. Brian lives in Benicia. It's like 16 miles south of Napa. Ain't that Benicia? It's like, yeah, it's right there. So I for sure, yeah, I bet your son knows exactly where Benicia is. That's cool. Thanks for chiming in, Brian, making that point with me. That's a lot of fun. Hey, I don't want to take much more of your time, and I have another show exactly after this one, so I want to wrap this up. But any final thoughts on your book or the being an author or anything else?
No, I hope as many people who want a really good thriller. I've had a number of really good endorsements from like women.com, She Reads, and
Howell Raines. That's a big endorsement. You know,
yeah.
that's ran the New York Times, executive editor. Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, he's a friend of mine. He was very kind, very nice to do that for me.
Yeah. I saw that endorsement. I was like, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. It's true. It's a book that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be an entertainment. At the same time, I think it would hopefully open people's eyes to the plight of millions of people in this country that we absolutely need put food on our tables.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let me wrap this thing up. Stand by for one moment.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you